Welcome back to part 3 of our series where we are exploring orders using the TD Ameritrade Python API library. So, last couple of videos, what were we talking about? Well, we talked about the operations we can do on orders. So just great, you have an order, what can you do with it and how do you do it? After we understood the operations, we then moved on to order types. So obviously orders come in many shapes and forms. So generally speaking, it's a good idea to have an understanding of some of the common order types, what they're designed to do, and when you might want to use them. Now that we understand order types, we're going to move on to advanced order types. And advanced is kind of a interesting word because it can mean many different things. It's not necessarily that the order itself is this crazy complex entity that, takes a ton of time to understand, but it's definitely used for a more advanced strategy in the sense of you want certain things to happen when maybe something else happens, or usually there's some type of relationship. You're not just submitting a single order, you're usually submitting an order that has different components to it, and that's really what we're talking about when we're talking about the advanced component of it. Is usually there's something else happening. It's not just submitting an order, but now because you've submitted that order, it might trigger something else, or you might now have multiple orders out there that are linked in some fashion. So with that being said, in this video, we're not necessarily going to execute the orders. I want us to more just understand what are we looking at? When would you might want to use this, right? So when would you want to use this and what is it designed to do? So there's going to be 3 ones we're going to be talking about: trigger orders, OCEO orders, and then trigger order that triggers a OCEO order. Very complicated, trust me. Additionally, you will find examples on the repo. So I've modified a couple notes on some of them because I think when I initially put up there, I put up the wrong one. But so they'll be up there in case you want to take a look at them. Keep in mind they are simple though, in the sense of, I'm just trying to give some basic examples. Obviously, you can do a lot more with these depending on what you're trying to do. So with that being said, let's jump into the first one. We're going to be talking about trigger orders. So a trigger order is a compound operation where an order, once filled, triggers execution of another order or other orders. So that's kind of the neat thing about this one. You can now have something tied together where one order triggers the execution of either a single order or multiple other orders. So this can be very advantageous where when your order executes, you might want to have a stop order go directly right behind it. So that way you're protecting your position at the same time. So very advantageous in that regard. The order that causes the trigger is the parent order. The one that is executed after the parent order is called the child order. This is really just my definition. So this was TD Ameritrade. This was me just kind of saying the way I think about it is you have a parent order, then you have a child order. So the parent order is the one that's doing the triggering. The child one is, hey, once it's been executed, what am I supposed to do? So how would you build a trigger order using a dictionary? And once you have it, what is this particular trigger order doing? Well, the first thing you're going to notice is you're going to have your main order, right? So pretty much everything above here is your main order. This main order is the parent order, and then this is where you're going to define the advanced functionality of this order. So you can see right here that order strategy type has now been changed to trigger. What this means is I am saying I'm doing an advanced order where I want the functionality of a trigger component. So it means that when this main parent order executes, I'm expecting something else to happen after it. Once you kind of take this out of the equation, when you're really looking at this one, it's just a normal limit order. So remember on the previous video where this would have been just limit and then that was our limit order? All we're saying now is that our main order right here is going to be a trigger. The first one will be our limit order. And in this situation, it's just a normal session. So during regular market hours, it's good for the day. It will activate at 8. And the activity that will come along with it is it will buy 1 share of Alcoa. So that's our parent order. The parent order defines the advanced functionality. We then have our child order strategies. So this is the one that will be triggered after this one executes. So once this one executes, all of this one will execute. Now, additionally, note something. You notice how child order strategy is a list? If you wanted to, you could have multiple orders execute. So in this situation, you could actually have multiple orders execute at once. You would just separate each kind of one of your orders by a comma, right? So what is this child order doing? Well, if you remember from the previous video, this is actually just kind of one of our limit orders we defined back above. So this should look really familiar. So all this one is going to do is we have another limit order where it's good for normal market hours. It's good for the day. It's an order limit. So sorry, an order type of limit. And then from here, we have a price of $8.50. So it will activate at $8.50. And when it activates at $8.50, it will sell one share of our Alcoa stock. So this one right here can think of me purchasing it. This one I can think of as my take profit order. So my take profit order. So once it reaches $8.50, do something. Once it reaches $8.50, sell my order. So my take profit order, if that's how you want to think about it. So this one buys it, this one locks my profit. So that's a trigger order. You have a parent and you have a child. The next one, OCO. So an OCO, also called one cancels another, or if you look up above, one cancels other, order is a compound operation where an order, once filled, cancels execution of another order. Keep in mind, the way this order is built assumes I already own the shares. When in this order do I make the purchase? So nowhere in this order do I make the purchase for the shares. So with this one, it is assumed that I already own the position, because right now, if I was to submit this, it wouldn't make a lot of sense if I don't own the share. So what is this particular order doing? Well, first thing I do want you to note is our order strategy type is now OCO. And in this particular situation, there is nothing below that. So because it's an OCO, I'm not having anything trigger it. So nothing is triggering it in the sense of up here, we had a trigger component. This one is we're just saying, hey, we're doing an OCO, and I'm going to define what those strategies are that I want to now be quote unquote linked. So in this situation, I have one child order where order one is my limit order. Again, good for the normal trading session. As a activation price of $45.97. It's good for the day. Still a order strategy type of single. It's just a single order. And then we have an order lake collection, which will sell 2 shares of Microsoft. Keep in mind, this is not the real price. It's just a fake price. You might be going, Alex, the price is way off. In fact, if you do put it too low, it will be kicked back. You can't have your limit price too far away from the actual trading price. Additionally, kind of like up above, this is acting as my take profit order. So my limit sell order to exit a long position. This one is my order number 2. So this will act as my stop loss, but you will notice it's a stop limit order. So this will activate at 37. So if the price goes below 37, it will activate and it turns into a limit order. But if the price goes down below 35, it will not execute. So basically, if you remember in the previous video, our stop limit kind of keeps us in a range. So it says, okay, get me out if I can, but once I get below a certain point, I cannot incur such a loss. I will mentally freak out. And so because of that, if it goes beyond that limit price, then what you need to do is just completely forget about the order. So if I had a regular stop order, then it will immediately turn into a market order. So normally with this one, the stop limit is for those very fast moving markets, but kind of like mentioned in the previous video, in a situation where the market is moving so fast, you might actually miss the market altogether. So you will not have a protected position, where if it was a regular stop market order, it would be filled, but the problem is it would be filled probably if in a very, very fast moving market, it might not be filled at the most desirable price. And so you could actually incur a very heavy loss if it was dramatically moving down. However, it's just important to know that if this one triggers, the one up here, this one automatically gets canceled. So order number 2. If this one triggers, this one up here automatically cancels. So again, it's that kind of here's my, I'm not being greedy order. Here is my, I want to protect my position order. So this one are linked. So these ones are linked. One executes, the other one is canceled. So that's an OCO order. We are now going to talk about a trigger OCO, which is basically adding a trigger component, which then triggers a OCO order. So the way I like to think about this one is you're waiting for an opportunity to happen. Once that opportunity happens, you want to make sure you have your order to prevent being greedy, but you also want to have your order to prevent a major loss. So with an OCO order, one triggers a one cancels other, or, no, this is, I think I took the wrong definition on this one, but an OCO, one cancels other, also called one cancels another, may be used as the trigger order in a trigger so that when the first order fills, both OCO orders become working. When either of the latter is filled, the other one is canceled. So again, with this one, if I had to put like a scenario around it, I'm looking for my opportunity to enter. I've entered my position. I want to then have my take profit order. And then I also want to have my kind of like my protection order, my stop order, or my stop limit order. So when you're building and this is where I get so confused, one triggers a one cancels other, I just call it trigger OCO. You have your main trigger order. So just imagine, I don't see anything below this. I have my main trigger order. This is what will trigger the OCO order. So in this situation, my order strategy type is trigger. I have a limit order where I'll buy one share of Microsoft at a limit price of 50. Again, this is a fake price. It's trading much higher than that. But once this order executes, it will then trigger an OCO order. So in this situation, I now have a child order strategy that represents an OCO order. That one also has another child order strategy. So you notice how this is becoming very nested. You can obviously make this as nested as you want, but at a certain point, it probably doesn't make a lot of sense because then it's going to be hard to interpret what exactly you're doing. And it's probably going to be hard to know what has been executed and what hasn't been executed. However, with this one, you can see OCO. And then kind of like up above, we now have our kind of our protect our profit and then our stop a loss if anything kind of goes out. Now, keep in mind, I did change it from a stop limit to a regular just stop order. So this will now, when it reaches the activation price, becomes a market order. So again, in a very fast moving market, this actually could be a situation where you're not going to get a very favorable price. But in normal market conditions, generally speaking, it should be somewhere around that stop price. So again, in normal market conditions. So in this one, protect me from a huge loss, ideally, as long as we're not doing a really fast moving market. And then here, once I've made my profit, get me out of the position. Again, I don't want to necessarily be greedy. I want to take my profit and run. Note that this one is higher. Note that this one is in below. And then this one is kind of in the middle. So very cool. Very, very, very cool. All right. And pretty much in a nutshell, those are really what I would call the advanced orders. Obviously, you can even do more with this depending on whether you're trading options or just regular stocks, but we will save that for a later date. At this point, if you have any questions about the advanced order types, by all means, put them down in the comments below, and I will do my best to hopefully give you a good answer. Unfortunately, there's not a ton of examples out there, and so unfortunately, sometimes you just kind of have to experiment a little bit. So normally when I tell people to experiment, obviously choose a very cheap stock that you don't really care if it all of a sudden you're taking a position that you weren't necessarily planning to take, or in some cases just try to be smart about it when you're trying to experiment a little bit, because that's what I do. I try to find like very cheap stocks that I'm like, okay, I don't care if I take a position in that one, like by all means go ahead. But of course, again, if you have questions, please ask away. In our next video, we're going to actually jump back to interactive brokers. So that's what's coming up with the interactive brokers stuff. And then I am currently in the process. So this is just making people kind of aware of some new repositories that are on my GitHub at the moment. Where did I put it? There, okay. So if you go to my GitHub repo, you will notice two new repos, if that's, yeah, we'll just call them that. One is Python trading robot. So there will be a series coming where we will build a trading robot using the TD Ameritrade Python API library. And then also, definitely one of my more popular series was doing the SEC scraping. What I have been working on is creating a library that you will be able to use to help make the process of interacting with, I'm not going to necessarily call it an API, but that particular website a little bit easier. So the idea behind it is wrapping and kind of just abstracting away some of the more complex stuff going on behind the scenes. But ideally, what it would look like is if you want to do things like grab directories for a particular company, you just pass through a CIK number. If you want to grab a specific directory, you pass through a CIK number and then a filing ID, and then also being able to query by filing types. In essence, what I'm really doing is I'm just kind of defining the common queries that you might do. And then depending on what is returned back, I would be parsing that data and giving you a dictionary back. So a JSON, or I mean, it's not really JSON at this point. It's really a Python dictionary, but I guess if you want to find your other equivalent, it would be your JSON object. And just really, I would think trying to standardize the interaction, that's really the big thing about it. And just common scenarios that might be useful. So things like, hey, I want to get just all the ownership filings for a particular CIK number. So you would be able to do that. And then what you could also do is you could filter it based on a date range. So if I only want ones that come between before or after a certain date, you could. If you want to get non-ownership filings, you want to get all filings, so you just don't care, like whatever, I just care more about the date range, that's also an option. You would be able to filter by company name. You would be able to filter by, doing the same thing, but doing company name. And then the other ones would be actually parsing. So getting like all the companies that fall under an SIC code, getting companies by country, getting companies by state, just a lot of, I think, useful stuff. So part of it is just interacting, getting the filings that you need. And then what I'll be doing is then focusing on parsing some filings or just seeing what that would look like. The problem is there's just a ton of different filing types. That's the biggest problem out of all of this, is there's just a ton. So it's really hard to say, hey, what would it look like and all that stuff, just given some of the complexity. But ideally, at least getting the filings, I want to try to standardize that. And then I'm working through giving you examples in the doc string so you can look at it and go, okay, yeah, nice. That's how you use it. And then this is what you should be expecting back. Part of it is I am trying to work on, just cleaning up certain things about it. So right now, what I want to do is for example, change the filing ID to something a little bit more intuitive instead of changing the name to something more intuitive, like, okay, that actually represents the filing ID. Just making sure it's more consistent, providing a URL. So normally what happens is there's not a URL that's in there. And so giving you access to that URL. And then what you could then do if you want is you could then take this and use it as a mechanism to go to that particular one. So that's I call the PySEC module. Maybe that's not the best name, but I like it. And then, and then we have the Pi robot one as well. And so, I'll show it. I'm not going to go into too much detail about it, just because it's still kind of it's come a long way in certain regards. So with this one, this would be used to do a trading robot. And so trying to just standardize certain things about trading, because trading's hard in a lot of regards in the sense of how do you think about it from a programming perspective. Personally, I like more of the component object model framework. So thinking of a complex idea as a breakdown of very simple ideas. And so part of it is identifying those simple objects and building in, what defines a portfolio? Like, how do you think about a portfolio from a programming perspective? What are the things it's supposed to be able to do? What are the things that describe it? And so part of this is helping you interact with those objects, and understanding what it would look like as you interact, and then giving you some examples and stuff like that. And then, common operations you would do with a portfolio, add, remove, stuff like that. Calculating certain metrics, what would that? And then just asking questions about your portfolio, like, hey, is that one in there? Is that particular position in there? Is that profitable? Understanding just different things about it. And then additionally, I've been also working on orders. So common orders, how can I simplify that process of building orders to make it a little bit easier on people? So again, it's not going to be for every type of person out there, but how could you make simple orders possible? Standard orders like stop orders, market orders, limit orders, making that stuff for you. And then, again, helping you through that process of building it. And then, just asking a couple questions about it to help standardize the way I interact with it. And then at the same time, giving you the functionality to do things like, hey, I want to make it where I want to add a stop. Okay, well, just tell me, I'll add it to the order for you. And then again, standardizing it. Or I want to modify and make it a good till cancel. What would that look like? Things along that nature where, again, you don't have to worry so much about building the dictionary per se, but more of just calling something and providing the information. And then I'll kind of handle that behind the scenes. So by all means, if you want to contribute to this one, I'm all open to hearing it. So if you want to add some suggestions, or if you want to add something to a particular object, by all means, you can, put you can do a merge request, or what is it on? When you push to it, whatever, I can't remember it off the top of my head, but anyway, like adding it to the repo. So by all means, if you'd like to do that, then put it in there. But yeah, that's kind of what's coming up. So hopefully that's giving people what they're looking for. That's always the goal. And then eventually we will be doing a JavaScript Excel add-in. So that one's also coming along too. So thanks again for watching, everybody. We'll see you in the next video.